Just give it a second here to boot up. And with that, we begin. Welcome, everybody, to the 6th episode of the Fuwanovel podcast. This one has kind of been a little out of order, so we'll make sure to upload this as soon as we can. Today's topic we will be discussing is the translator versus the author. A lot of you might be thinking, well, we already know what a translator does. We already know what the author does. But recently on the forums of Fuwa, this is something that was really big and a lot of people discussed. And I thought, what better way to do it than in a podcast episode to state some opinions? So I have with me some very special guests. Today, like I said, we'll be discussing the translator versus author. And some of the questions you can expect in this podcast episode will be what, in my three guests' opinions, is the difference between an author and a translator. What do they like about certain authors of visual novels? Do they like multiple authors? Do they like one author? Things like that. In terms of translator, what kind of translations do they like? Do they like the original language to be maintained a lot, or do they kind of like it in the fact that the language we will be discussing here is obviously English? When they are translated into English, do they like it to be very authentic in terms of if an English person was reading this, this is how this would be said, even though it's said differently in the other languages? We also might be discussing, do you feel these roles are required to fulfill certain duties with no questions asked, such as are they, and that branches off into our next question, which is, do you feel it is the translator's job to edit the original work of the author to make it more appealing to a certain demographic? So our guests will share with their own opinions what, they think the translator's actual role is for a visual novel. Is it okay to cut H scenes and not translate them because they want to censor the game or make it more appealing to all ages? Is it fair for them to remove content from an author's work to make it appealing? And the flip side, I'll ask, is if you were the author of a visual novel and you wrote something original, do you feel cutting some of your own work would upset you? Or do you find more joy in the fact that your work was translated for a larger audience in the first place? Are you appreciative that, your visual novel in this case is branching out to more people and they're able to read it? Or do you feel, that H scene really emphasizes more the story. I did it a little differently than most H scenes. It's not more of an ukige, is it more of his, it's really crucial to the story, and a lot of people don't think that. But, everyone has their own opinions. So with me today, I have like I said, three very special guests, and they will introduce themselves here, and we'll get started with the recording right away. So if you guys just want to introduce yourselves, give me a little spiel about where you're from, why you want to be a part of this podcast episode. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Akkisblade. I'm from Mexico. And well, actually, I want to join this podcast after reading that thread. I mean, it made such an uproar when I read it. I have a Skype conversation with some Fuwa members. They were all like, "Hey, what's happening here?" Some guys saying H scenes should be cut when translating them. So I thought, hey, why not give it a try in a podcast?
Pretty good, fair enough. Bobby, if you want to introduce yourself. I don't even know how to say your name. I'm sorry.
No, you could say Babiker. But anyway, I'm kind of from a lot of places, but I'm from Britain, and the reason I want to be in this podcast is that I know both languages are English, and I've been quite familiar with translations from both languages, and I've seen multiple works of art, novels, movies, and so I personally think that it's okay for the translator to edit whatever he sees fit.
Okay. And our last guest here.
Hi, I'm the Major from the United States. I just wanted to get in on this topic. Because I didn't get in on the thread, and it was a very, very interesting discussion that went on there, so I just wanted to get my 2 cents in here on the podcast.
All right, guys. Thanks for your introductions. And with that, we will begin our podcast right away, so we'll jump right in. First, we'll kind of get a lay of the land of how you guys think, what you like about authors and translators. What are your favorite types of authors? What are your favorite types of translators? And what, in your opinion, those roles are responsible in doing in a visual novel? So, Akis, I'll start with you. I'll ask the first question here. In your opinion, what is the role of an author? What do you like about specific authors? What kind of authors from certain visual novels, if you can pull from any in your personal experience, have you enjoyed? Things like that. And go ahead.
Well, I think what being an author or well, any kind of author has to do is to convey those feelings, those thoughts they have when they're writing something. I think that makes for successful, if not with everyone, but with some people, a successful work. What I like about authors, well, I don't really search for something specific. I mean, I just want a nice story. So, well, if I had to say something, it's like I try to avoid nukiges and things like that because personally, I think they don't have a lot of story. Well, hell, they don't have. Um, um, well, it's something like I prefer things like nakiges or thrillers. Um,
Just a quick
I don't
question.
know. Okay.
Just a quick question for you. Can you explain what a nakige is for our guests and what a nukige is for our guests, just for people that don't actually know the terminology or the lexicon?
Okay, so actually I'm kind of quoting visual novel database, but a nukige would be a game focused on erotic content. It usually isn't a long game, could be from 2 to 10 hours or less than 2 hours. It focuses, like I said, on heroic content, sex scenes, and little to non-existent story.
Okay.
However, an Aki game, it's what some people would say tear-jerking stories. It would be kind of like Clannad, maybe Little Busters, Tomoyo After. Well, that visual novel has no happy ending, at least until the remake. So they are more story focused and they tend to be a little bit longer.
When you say tearjerkers, do you mean more stories that are you said you like nakiges? Are they more love romance stories, or can they really be anything? I mean, do they have to necessarily have love to be tearjerking? Because a lot of times people think of like romantic stories being as tearjerkers, but a lot of times, I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
It's just my personal opinion, but I think for a story to be tear jerking, it doesn't necessarily have to have romance. You can have a tear jerking story. I don't know, with friends, family. I don't know, maybe like bond between brothers, and suddenly one of them dies. It's killed, and if the characters were developed as necessary as they should be, you could actually be crying when you read something like that.
Okay, fair enough. All right, guys. What about you, Babby or Major? What do you think? I guess we'll start with Babby. Authors, what do you like? What kind of authors do you look for? Or even, I guess we've kind of gone into what visual novel styles do you like, because obviously the authors write the visual novels. What do you think?
Okay, the kind of visual novels I like would definitely be the more story-focused ones that are that have less hastings overall, and well, the same kind that Akkis just mentioned a few seconds ago. That's about the author.
Okay. What do you think is the role, like, I mean, it's mostly common sense for people, but what do you think the role of an author is when they're writing something? Do you think they're responsible for writing all the content, the H scenes, everything, or do you think there should be multiple authors in a story when they're writing? Like, what do you think? Do you think one responsibility should fall solely on one person, or do you like multiple people kind of contributing to a project?
Well, I personally prefer when more than one person doing it, like in rewrite, because then you get a story that has more variety to it.
Okay. Do you think that this can, like, with the variety, you think that a lot of times they're pretty good about maintaining a consistency, or do you feel like in examples like Katawa Shoujo, I don't know if you play that game, you can kind of get the odd, like, you can see where they're kind of just, they all wrote their own stories, they put them together, and then it's like, we somehow have to make these connect. And they do it, but it's like kind of clunky in some ways or the other? I mean, do you feel that that's pretty noticeable, or do you feel that most visual novels, original Japanese works, do a pretty good job of that?
Well, no, they're not all the same, but that's what makes them visual novels. The thing about visual novels is that I think that every single route has to be more different than the last one. And when there's more authors, there's more of a chance for it to be different. So that's why I like more doing authors.
Okay, very interesting. Major, what do you think about authors in general, and just the same things that have been discussed?
Well, I don't really have an opinion of like what I like about authors. I don't really, I don't know. For the role, I think it's okay for multiple authors. For there to be multiple authors as long as it's well coordinated. I know Katawa Shoujo was brought up, though I only read one route of that, so I can't really say anything about that. But the author, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that, because I can expand on that. It's interesting you say that because we're kind of talking differences between like book authors. When I think of an author, the first thing I go to is a book. I'm not sure if you all feel the same way, but most people go to a book. An author of a book. George R.R. Martin is the author of Game of Thrones, very popular TV series all over the world. But when you think of a book, you don't think of multiple authors. So when you say you guys appreciate, like for you, Major, you appreciate the multiple authors, is there something you can say that's different for you when you like read a book? Why you think that like having multiple authors in a book isn't a good thing? I mean, I guess because it's just one huge common story. But what do you think about that? Like, what makes it so that like, if you can use that as an example, why multiple authors? Do you just like Babiker said the originality, or?
Yeah, well, a book, it's one. It feels like one whole story, but with like a visual novel, there's opportunity for the different routes. So, it's cool if you can have multiple people bringing multiple perspectives, as long as it's well coordinated and it can come together nicely. There's like the Katawa Shoujo, you're saying it felt a little off, like it was just pieced together.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I guess then we can go right into, you guys have stated your opinions about authors, what you like about them. We can go right into the next topic then, which is more about the translator side of things. Major, we'll start with you. We'll kind of do a reverse here. What do you think, in terms of translators, what do you kind of think their role is? And this is kind of going to reflect your answers into what our main discussion is the role of a translator. What are they actually required to do, which is what our thread was about, which was all apparently your interest in this podcast, is what is kind of the role of a translator. What do you look for in a translation yourself? You guys can state your opinions on that. What do you not necessarily like about a translator? Because I don't just say, hey, I like that translator. But, like, what do you like about good translations? Maintaining the originality. Do you like it to feel more real? Do you like it to be more modern in the translation? Obviously, some visual novels are reflected in, like the past. But, there's a lot of, if you read a visual novel about like feudal Japan, the vocabulary used there is not going to be the same vocabulary in English old times. And so like, how do you reflectively, I don't know if you've played those kinds of VNs like that, those really advanced ones, but like, how do you make that, transfer that in? What do you think about just translation in general, the role of a translator, Major?
Well, a translator to me needs to translate the original author's work to the best of their abilities. And for me, that means not taking out content. That's just what it is. How can I say this?
Take your time. I mean, you feel they don't...
Yeah.
So you don't feel they should cut any material. Do
No.
you, like... Let's use an example that was one of the big controversies. If My Heart Had Wings, I think is what it was called. A lot of people had a big controversy with that. I never was into that scene, so I don't know too much about it. So if you guys want to open up that door to me, that's absolutely fine. But a lot of people were upset that originally they said that they were only going to remove the H scenes. But what upset people is that they didn't just remove the H scenes, they removed all content from the like the game itself. And that's like saying an editor of a book, when you bring your book to go get edited before it gets published, that's just removing straight out the original work. Like, it'd be like reading Game of Thrones, is what people were upset about, without the actual like sex and the killing. Like, it just take it all out. Like, how do you portray the character of Tyrion or something? I'm not going to spoil this, by the way. Without, like, or just like all the characters that people love, without all the death and stuff surrounding them, and the actual like medieval, like, this is what history was like in this time period. And so a lot of people had a controversy of that. So like, what do you were kind of expanding on that. So I guess you can go, like, when you say like you don't want to cut anything out, what do you kind of mean, like, in that sense?
Well, I'm including each scenes in that.
Okay. Do you feel that it is okay then to have multiple translators for a project? I guess I'll go on that note.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've heard people say they don't want to translate H scenes just because they don't want to. That's not their thing. They don't want them. They don't want them in there anyway. And if you can find someone else to do it, sure, why not?
Okay.
I'm okay
but
with
usually,
multiple translators.
There's the lead translator who does like most of the translating, and they're the ones responsible for the project's upbringing. And when they advertise it, do you think then, even though they don't want to do the H scenes, do you still think they should find, before they even release a patch, they should find those people? And I mean complete patches, by the way, not like partials. Do you think they should find some people to translate those routes, or those H scenes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, very interesting. If you think of anything else, you can expand on that. Just come back to you. Bobby, what do you think about translators and just things like that in general?
Okay, when it comes to translators, I think the translator's role is to edit the original work as much as he sees. Like, for instance, to most Westerners, H scenes might not be acceptable. So if he wants to take them out, it's his choice. Especially when it's, it's not like an official translation. No one's around to tell him what to do. But overall, he should edit it to whatever he sees fit. But if he doesn't care if his targeted audience accepts what he's translating, then yeah, he could stick to the original as much as he wants.
Okay, so just to clarify, because I might have misheard the wrong thing, you said that it's okay to cut some of the things out if you feel it maintains the originality of the work.
Yeah, he should, yeah.
Okay, so you are, then I take it, not really too much of a fan of H-scene content, because H-scene, to a lot of people, don't really have the story content, so just kind of, you're just not really a fan of those?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm not really a big fan of H-scene.
Okay, fair enough. It's just an opinion, no matter. Okay. Again, if you feel like you have anything to add, just let me know. Akkis, what do you think?
Okay, I think the translator's job is, well, it may sound a little repetitive, but he should translate, he, she, whatever, translate the original content without editing something. However, if he feels like taking out something like H scenes because he, she doesn't like them, it's okay. I mean, they are the ones doing the job. They're working for the sake of hundreds, maybe thousands of other people who either don't know the language or just don't have the time or, the time to translate something for free. I mean, you're working in something that will take you months, and you're not getting anything for it. So if you feel like taking something out, I think it's perfectly okay. But personally, I'd prefer if they just stick with the original thing, and even if they don't like things like H scenes or in If My Heart Had Wings case, that I heard they took out things like sexual innuendo, even things like kisses. Come on.
Okay.
Even if they don't like those things, they should just translate them and include them. It's not going to hurt them, and if the reader doesn't like them, you can always press Control. I mean, it should skip everything even if you haven't read it. Personally, I do that. I mean, I used to read the H scenes, but it got boring at some point. So I just decided to skip them. However, I don't skip all of them. I mean, I couldn't skip Yumiko's or Amane's H scene in Grisaya no Kajitsu. Did I say it right? Well, it's pretty much like that. And about multiple translators, I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, you could change a lot of things. Let's say you and I, Ren, are translators. We are both reading something, but we can translate them with different words or in a different context. So if you have 2 or more translators working in the same project, some things like that can happen, and the original meaning may be lost between that.
Okay. Kind of a little follow-up on some of the stuff you said. One of the things I was more interested, I'll go back a little bit here. You had talked about... well, I guess we'll just start with this one. You had talked about the many translators. We'll just start with that because it's more recent. You had mentioned, you know, it's okay to have many translators. So one of the things, what if, here's more of a question. This can be a question kind of for all of you guys, so feel free to all open up on the questions, not just for Akkis. If there are multiple translators on the project, and one translator is okay with translating H scenes and releasing that content, but the other translator kind of wants to cut some of the material out of his own translation, where do you think the fine line between those 2 translators or multiple translators has to agree upon? Is it ultimately the project head's decision to say, no, this is how you do it, and then if you don't want to do this, you're off the project? Or do you feel like, hey, you know, you're making your own content, usually they don't just say, I'll translate some of Common Route, and you translate some of Common Route. That's very rarely done. It's usually I got the common route, you translate this route, you translate this route. They usually split it in a cohesive manner, so you won't find like clunkiness in the common route or anything, generally speaking. But let's say, you know, they like do have 2 separate routes, and one route's really censored, or really the person didn't want to do a lot in it, and then the other route is not censored. Do you feel like that their translation is garbage and that they should just throw that all out? Or how would you work with that? If you were the project head, let's give you the example here. If you guys were the project head, what would you do? And this is kind of a question to everybody. You could start with Akkis because it was your question, but just feel free, anybody, to open up on that. Go ahead.
I think I would rather translate and release all of the content. However, if someone doesn't agree with it, I think it would be kind of maybe not wise or smart to ask for the whole team's opinion. I mean, if maybe he's not the only one who doesn't want, let's say, H scenes released. You can get to know what your team wants, and you can all agree to do something. Like, let's say, okay, we're going to release, I don't know, two different patches. One with the whole content, and the other without H scenes.
Okay. So if you were the head of a project, then what I'm getting is that you would be okay with multiple people having different opinions about stuff and kind of work together as a team? Or would you just say, you know, I agree with the whole translation. If you're not willing to do that, I'll find another translator?
Well, yeah, if it's only one person who's is like, no, I don't want this to be released, I don't want to translate this, I don't want to work on this. It's like, okay, you know what? There are a lot of people here, they're not complaining, they maybe don't care about whether the H scenes other things are released or not. Okay, we'll find someone else. Thanks for working with us. Maybe we'll see our work in some projects later.
Okay,
good luck.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Sure, okay, Major, what do you think?
Well, you know, it's...
If you were the head of a project, how would you treat it? I mean, you're the shot caller, so...
So what's the situation? I've got one translator who doesn't want to
Could be
translate his
one,
H
could be
scenes.
multiple. It could be. Let's say you have two translators translating routes. One route they're really original in how you believe in that they're fine. They're translating everything. They're doing the H scenes. Another one, kind of they do the H scenes. Let's say from another person, but then they kind of like they cut some of the lines out because they feel they're inappropriate and they're kind of not agreeing with the whole project. And it could be multiple.
Just have it. I would just, well, if I've got somebody who's okay with translating the H scenes, I would probably just have them do them.
Okay.
And I would put the H scenes in. Yeah.
Okay. So you guys are okay with like putting, let's say there's one translator on one route, another translator on another, and then that one translator on the one route is not willing, to translate the H scenes. You're okay. Let's say, but the first translator is okay with doing it. You're okay with putting like multiple translators in on multiple routes, because obviously everyone's different when they translate, and this is kind of the point I'm trying to get across, is that everybody is different in how they translate Japanese, how they think the English should be read. Yes, you have an editor, but sometimes you have multiple editors, and so you have differences in how things are consistent. And so are you okay with taking multiple translators and working on one route together, because obviously their language skill might be different. They might translate differently. It'd be like, for example, putting, a really good translator with someone who's okay at translating and get the job done, but they don't have as much Japanese level as, say, person A. So you guys are okay with that, or what do you think?
If it were just H scenes, like if I had somebody working on one route and I had one translator who was okay with doing H scenes, I would just have them do all of them, even if it's not on the route they're working on.
Okay. Very interesting. All right, Bobby, what do you think about it? If you were the head of a project, what would you do?
I think, I think if I was there, I'm the one telling them what to.
Okay, so you would just be like, if this isn't feeling my point of view, then I'll find a different translator.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. It's a pretty simple answer. This doesn't need to be too complex. Just was curious about it. All right, guys. With that, I'm going to actually peel back to something that Aki said a while ago. This is a little further back in your discussion about like translation. You talked about these people, how they do these translations for free. These people usually are generally not getting paid for these projects. This is an interesting question, and I'll open this up to all of you. I'm kind of adding this on the question list here. I didn't really preview it. Free. When you work for free, who do you feel, if you were a translator, who do you feel you are trying to translate for? Do you feel it is your responsibility to please the people that are getting the patch, or do you think, you know what? Screw those people. This is my translation. I'm not getting paid for this. I will do what I want, and this is how I want to do it. Or do you feel like the pressure of the people is like, hey, we want to see these H scenes, and let's say, just using an example the people are saying, because most of you agree that, they should be in it, is that these people, except Bobby, so you can do the alternate of this question, these people don't want to see these H scenes, or these people do want to see these H scenes, and you're going, no, I do want to do them, or no, I don't want to do them, depending on, which circumstance. And then it's like, well, do I please the people? Because I'm not really getting paid for this, and, am I pleasing these people, or am I pleasing myself? I'm just curious what you guys think about that opinion. Any one of you can start, I guess, just on an opinion.
Well, I think if I were translating something, it could be both. I'm actually, well, it sounds kind of bad from my point of view, but I'd be pleasing myself and pleasing others.
Okay.
Why would I be pleasing myself? Because it's something I'm working on, I'm dedicating my time on, and well, it's something that took me a while. I mean, you just can't translate something from a day to another. It's like that saying that goes, Rome wasn't built on a day. I mean, you actually have to learn the language properly. Well, both of them. The one you're translating from and the one you're translating to. And, well, you actually have to translate everything. And, well, regarding whether or not I could something, it'd be, if I was working on it, of course, something like, okay, I think people could enjoy the whole visual novel if it has age scenes or not, I'll just release it complete. If they don't like it, they just can't skip it. But, well, let's be honest, a lot of people don't skip age scenes. They like them.
Okay. Very interesting. What about you guys, Bobby and Major? What do you think, Major? Saw your mic light up there. Putting you on the spot.
Well, yeah, and then I stopped because I was still thinking.
Sorry, I have a cuckoo clock. I'm going to quick stop that just so I can get a little more attention here. I apologize to the viewers who are watching this later. There we go. All done. Continue, sorry.
Well, so, the thing with fan translations is, it's free work. You're not getting paid, whatever. So, I don't see why you would need to please the masses or whatever if, you wanted to do it one way and everyone's saying you should do it another.
Okay.
But to me, it's about trying to stick to the original work as closely as possible. And so that would usually mean leaving in H scenes, even if everyone wanted them out. That's what skipping is for. People should have that option.
Okay.
I don't think it's up to the translator to decide if people should even be allowed to skip it or not by taking it out.
I'm going to stop you right there. It's interesting you brought that up because this is another topic I wanted to go back. Akis mentioned this too, and now I remember. Thank you for reminding me. The H-scene content. People say, you guys were talking about how you're able to skip them. But one of the controversies that was actually in the thread, which I'd like to bring up, was that, and I might actually, there's another thing I want to bring up from the thread too, so I'm kind of throwing additional questions on you. One of the things that was brought up in the thread was that, you can't really officially skip H-scenes. Controlling through them still makes you see the H-scene. It's not like you can skip the scenes and know when they come. Because a lot of times, it's not really predicted when they're coming. Do you feel that these patches, if there was a way, they should be able to tell you, hey, warning, H scene approaching, and then those people can just... But, that was one of the controversies that people thought. It's like, even if you do cut out H scenes, it's not like you're skipping them in the first place. And so, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's. I was going to bring that up actually, but thing is, I think that the best choice is if they had something, like Kato or Shoujo, when you had the option to actually stop the H scenes or see them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be like the best possible option. But yeah, even if you do press control, you're still seeing the H.
See, now I'm interested because I don't know too much about how translating actually works and getting the scripts. Like how they hack them to get all the scripts. I mean, in Katawa's case, they made the game. They programmed the game as well as write it. So they were able to do that in their options. However, adding that feature on just a patch that translates, I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if, that's, because that's changing the entire game coding itself, not just the scripts. So, I mean, is that even possible for one thing, and if it is, I mean, do you think that's something that people should start doing? So I don't know. I'm not a coder. I don't know too much about it, but just any other opinions on it, just in terms of, just not being able to skip? Major, you seemed like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, if that's an option, being able to put that in, like you were saying, that involves putting in code or something, and I don't know how that works, but I'm all for options. Mm-hmm. I think people should have the option if they want to skip or not.
Okay, Maki's, any opinions?
Well, I support the option to skip the edge scenes as well. I think there's a BN that actually has that. I think it was EF. I don't know, I think it was the full game, and I don't know if it was something the developer actually put in it or something Manga Gamer just implemented. There was an option, I believe, at the beginning of the game. Once you click Start Game, New Game, there was an option that said, do you want to skip age scenes, mature content? And it was like, well, I don't know, maybe I'll just watch them.
Okay. Alright, any other thoughts about translators in general that I might have missed? Okay, guys, we've been talking a lot about the translator, leaving out the author portion of it, so let's switch gears here, kind of switch back to that, a little more opinion on that. So I'll start with a question here. If you guys were the author of a VN, so this is now you are viewing as an author the person's opinions of, well, you're seeing what the translators are doing to your work. You're now the author, and this might reflect some of your answers, just like they did in the translator, which is absolutely fine, but sometimes they might have a different opinion. If you were the author and realized, let's start with one that can kind of open you up to this thought process. I'll go back to the whole idea about it being a free work from translators. As an author, when you author a game, made that up. When you are the author of a game, you are getting paid for it. The people that make those games put them on the shelves. Those people pay for those games in some way or another. Now, a lot of these games in themselves are, when you translate them and you patch them into something, sometimes the patches include the games with them, which was another big controversy when it was in the thread, is that the author, you make a game, you get paid for it, cool. You got your money, you get your royalties, just like you make music, you're happy. But people are going to take that, and they're going to put it out to the community, and the translators are going to translate it, which is absolutely, and everyone has their opinion about that. That's not really our focus of this podcast. But if you were the author, and you saw that, with all those people with the translator, like, how would you feel about that? Do you feel that cutting some of your own work would upset you in a way, which kind of would, like I said, might reflect some of your answers you gave in the translator portion of this. Do you feel that would upset you, or would you just find more like joy in the fact that, like, they're being translated for a larger work? Let's say a translator, and I'll use an example here. I know I'm asking a lot of questions. Let's say a translator, let's start simple. Let's say a translator cuts some of your work. It's like, no, I don't like the H scenes. And you saw that. Would you say to yourself, okay, you know what, they did this for free. It's not like they're getting paid for something I made, so, I don't feel like I'm getting any, like, if, a copyright infringement or something like that. But, they're doing something out of their own kindness. Would you feel happy in that fact? Or would you say, you know what, those H scenes, even though they're not really story-filled H scenes, I really worked hard on those as an author, and, I got a great artist, and they did great CG work, and it kind of was like, oh, I'm really upset about that. So if you were the author, Babby, I'll start with you on this question because you haven't started a question yet. What do you think?
I think if I was actually the author, and I would read the translated work, like if I knew the language, of course. But I would read the translated work, or I would somebody would tell me what the guy changed, what the translator changed, and then I would go to him and ask him why did he change it. If I find the reason reasonable, like i.e. Westerners don't like H scenes, for instance, then I wouldn't mind.
Okay, interesting. Any other thoughts, guys?
Free exposure, that's always a great thing. If something I had written was translated. But ultimately, a little disappointed that people weren't experiencing it how I intended to. So that would, that'd be disappointing, but...
Okay.
Well, I think if I was an author, and that's a work like of mine being, I don't know, released in another language, first I could be kind of happy. I work hard on this. Yeah, let's say my country or other countries that speak the same language, it's being sold, I'm getting paid for it, okay. But now, what about all those other places in the world that don't understand the language it's written in? I think I would be quite happy that someone's translating them. But if they got something, let's say the H scenes, I think the first thing that would cross my mind is like, okay, maybe some people don't like H scenes. I should work on that later. And maybe it's when this skip the H scenes major content option comes in. And well, whether they're getting paid or not, let's say an official translation or an official translation, it's okay. No, people are knowing are going to know what I'm working with. If they like it, they'll search for it later. If they don't, maybe they'll find something that suits their tastes.
Okay. Very interesting. Another thing that was brought up in the thread about that was that just in terms of generalization of author versus translator, one of the other controversies that was argued about in the thread was that people think that if you are upset with the whole things being cut or just things not appealing to you as you want them to, it's okay. Just read it. You need to learn Japanese. It's your responsibility to learn the language if you want to read something in its original work. Which is obviously, there are some cases of that I could bring up. When you read books like, Le Petit Prince in French, or you read, The Great Gatsby in obviously English, or whatever you read those books in. And those are translated all over the world. I've seen copies of them. Il Fuwanovel Pascal is an Italian book. It's kind of like the Conte Monte Cristo, and it is a fantastic book, but I read it in English, and then I read it in Italian. And some of those original, you just can't, it's not the same. And one of the things they were arguing was that in the thread was that, if you want to maintain, it's okay for the translators to be able to cut some of these authors' works because in its essence anyways, you're reading it in a different language. Therefore, you're not getting the true value of it. You won't appreciate, like you watch a movie and scenes, like you watch The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo in Swedish and you watch the English version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, very popular book from Sweden, and you clearly see the role differences. I'm like, whoa, this one has way more this and this one is way more Americanized. Like which one appeals to you? So that was one of the arguments that they thought. I just want to know your thoughts on that. If you had any opinions about that, it kind of goes back to some of the things you've been saying, but just like in general, what do you feel, do you feel that, hey, if you want something original, go learn Japanese? Do you think it's fair to say that to these people, which is what some of the arguments people were bringing up, or do you think it's kind of like, that's kind of unreasonable? You shouldn't be expected to just have to straight out do that if somebody's translating. But then again, that goes same along with the translator's job. So what do you guys think about that? I'll just open that up to any of you.
Well, I think that when you're translating something, you can't help but put something, translate it and write it in, while being influenced by your thoughts. What do you think? I mean, maybe there's some racial thing in a book or something, and you actually, let's say, dislike that race or something, or religion, wherever. It's possible that while you're translating it, you're going to write something that it's not entirely the thing the author originally intended to convey. So I think if you actually want to read the original thing, you should learn the language or search for something like that. It's not as easy.
Okay.
Oh, it's not.
Do you believe, and this is a question I've gotten growing up, do you believe that, and this is even a question going into like dubs and subs of anime, and this is a completely different topic, but point being, do you believe that in this case a translated work can be as good, if not better, than the original work? Or are you a strong believer that the original work is the best? Same thing with a dub or sub of an anime. Do you believe that a dub can be just as good or better as the original subtitles, or just the original work itself? I mean, it's kind of a question on that. What do you think?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think I don't remember where, but I read somewhere that usually when translating some visual novel, or I don't know, maybe even manga light novels, a lot of translators use a lot of more complex, fancy words than the ones used in the original work. So I think it might be a little better sometimes than the original one.
Okay. It's interesting you bring that up too, because that goes into kind of an editor topic of what is the editor's responsibility, but that obviously is not what our podcast is about. How much is too much to, and I have opinions about that, but that's something completely different. But okay, I'm just curious about that. So we'll go back to that original topic I was asking, just about, like with the, the example I used with the girl with the dragon tattoo. Do you think, the original works And then even you guys could expand on that question that Aki said, do you believe that a translated work can be just as good as, if not better, than the original work? And obviously it's hard because I'm not sure if you guys actually read Japanese original novels, but you can use this as any experience in your life. Do you believe translated works of novels or things you have read in other languages, if you do know other languages, are as good as the original? Or you can even use subtitles as an example. If you've watched like a French film and you've read the subtitles and be like, wow, no, that's bad. What do you think?
Okay. As for what was the question again? Oh yeah, to me, translations can never be equal to the original. Like, I've read lots of books in the Arabic language and lots of books in English. And actually, I want to bring up an example that's a lot more serious than the end. But the holy book of the Muslims, the Quran. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they use this book they read the book in holy prayers and like daily life. If you read this book in any language but Arabic, it's invalid. Like in prayer, in any kind of worship, in any form of worship, if you use it in any other language, it's invalid. And at the same time, if you quote from the Quran in another language, your quote is like invalid. You have to learn the Arabic language if you like want to learn the Quran. But that's a lot more serious. If we're talking about something like novels, you don't really have to be that serious.
Okay. Major, any thoughts?
So I don't know any other languages besides English. So
Boo.
I can't...
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So, I can't really say that, one can be better than the other because I've never read the same thing in the original language and then the translated language. So,
Okay. Well, why don't we use anime as an example? Have you watched anime a lot?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Have you watched dubs and subs?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Of the same show. Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel that, in your opinion, the original work was better with the subtitles, or do you feel that the dub did its duty and the actors were good enough? I mean, what do you think about that?
I usually prefer the dubs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone has their opinion about it. Okay, so you'd probably think, and it's hard because it's a novel.
I think a translation can be equal, maybe better than the original, but then again, I don't know because I only know English.
Yeah, speak the language. I mean, it's also difficult too because to a Japanese person, their thought process, everyone's culture is different. So it's hard to say, like, when you read something in Japanese and they reflect on something that's really big in the Japanese culture, because I've been to Japan myself and stuff like that, like, the whole idea of, like, perverted jokes are very big in visual novels a lot of the times. There's a lot of, like, talk about S&M. It's a very big topic. Well, maybe some countries like myself, like, I don't really think of S&M, when we're in our country, in the United States. It's not really like it's there, we know what it is, but it's not like what? Like, it's not as big as it is. So maybe, like, to, like, when you translate that in English, you're like, well, this is really weird. Like, so every culture is different, so it's kind of hard to say with novels. But, I mean, generally speaking, from what the anime you've watched, you might, you think it could be, okay, it's very interesting. Very interesting. Any counters to any of your guys' choices? Do you disagree? Do you disagree? Feel free to open up on any of your other opinions too. Like, argue them or say why. Any thoughts on that?
I just want to quickly say that, like, most of the time, the original work is, to me at least, better than the translator. But at times, if the translator works really, really hard, he can actually make it better than the original.
Okay.
I think an example for that would be the ending for Sword Art Online. I don't know if any of you have listened to it, but there's an English translation on YouTube. And I personally found it a lot better than the original. I didn't even listen to it in English.
Okay. I mean, it's different for everything entirely, because if, everything is different of who's doing what and how the writing is written. But, it's always different, and obviously you have to know multiple languages to be able to appreciate that kind of stuff. Then whatnot. But I mean, you could just, because like in anime you can go off actors, but in terms of novels, it's difficult because you don't obviously change voice in the visual novel. You don't get different voice actors to edit the translation of the voice acting. So, and that is possible. You could technically do it. You could go in and change the sound files and put in your own sound files. I'm sure if you could do it with text, you can do it with music. I know you can do it with games like Left 4 Dead, which I do for audio. So you could probably do it for a visual novel too. But it's interesting.
I wish they did that.
Okay,
that'd be awesome.
That's very interesting. Let's go on that topic then. This is something kind of just a little. It's still on the same topic. Translators, do you think that would you like to see something cool where translators would actually remove video or actual audio files and put it in their original language in their own acting? I mean, obviously, not many people are professional actors who are translators, and obviously that is a high-paying job in a lot of different countries, and it is something that you need to actually know how to do efficiently, in my opinion, to be good at it. You can't just, willy-nilly go up and start acting and think you're good. But is that something you guys would be interested in? Major, you said you were interested in it. What do you
So what, editing the sound?
Yeah, the sound files too.
Actors?
In addition, with English or the language voice actors. Okay.
Yeah, sure. If it was a good translation, I'd be all for it.
Do you think it could be done effectively though, or would you think that it'd be the translator project lead's job to hire people or bring on people that are really good at acting? Because I don't think a girl really wants to read too many H scenes or read them out loud. I mean, there's people out there, I guess, but So,
yeah, I don't know.
Okay. What do you guys think, Babi? Aki, is that something that you think would be cool, you'd like to see, or is it kind of just man, I don't really care?
Well, regarding the voice acting, sound changing the sound files, whether it's voice, the BGM, I don't think it could be something I'd like. I mean, it's like with movies. And, I don't know, series, anime, cartoons, pretty much everything. I actually prefer to hear the original audio, even if it's some language I don't understand, let's say Chinese.
Okay.
I like to hear it, and even if the subs aren't as good as the original dialogue, I think it's better to have it like that, not dubbed or something. I feel it's like replacing something the actors, voice actors, wherever, actually work hard into.
Okay.
And it's not really worth it.
Okay.
So you would rather watch an anime with subpar subtitles than watch that anime with really good English dub voice acting?
Yes, I agree.
Wow. Okay.
It's interesting. Okay. All right. Babi, what are your thoughts?
I don't really mind either way, the original voice or the dub, as long as the dub is good. Because some dubs are, horrible, but most of the time, if they're good enough, yeah.
Okay, it's interesting. I had something else I really wanted to ask, but now I don't remember. Okay. Well, guys, do you have any more thoughts about Translator Author? We're coming up to about 55 minutes here in the podcast. We can start wrapping it up. Is there any other thing you guys wanted to say opinion-wise that we might have missed via Translator or just author in general? Or anything from the thread that really you read and you were just like, wow, this really stuck out and I didn't address? Because obviously there was a lot of different opinions in there stated, and I tried to read most of them. But, I mean, everything was, I didn't want to sift through pages entirely, so I don't remember everything. Was there anything that you guys remember that you guys really wanted to address or you felt really strong about?
Nope.
Not really.
Okay.
There's just one thing I would like to mention.
Okay.
Usually when translating, there's two big goals. Number one would be to make the translation as close to the original as possible, which is the one everybody cares about. And the other one would be to make the translation as acceptable to the new audience as possible. And most of the time, actually, both these goals clash, and you have to choose one over the other, either to make it as close to the original or to make it accessible to the new audience.
Okay, very interesting, because that goes back on that same topic about who do you think you're trying to please for? And you guys had answered that as well earlier in the podcast. Is, you know, or you want to make it pleasing to your audience, so you're definitely a believer of making it pleasing for people that read it. Okay, interesting. All right. If nobody has anything else to say, then thank you guys for coming on the podcast. That'll be it for episode 6. This is our podcast episode that we have uploaded that will bring us on par. I'm still trying to release 2 episodes per month. This will bring us on par for July, which means August episodes. They will start to slow down a lot more at a pace like this. So we'll upload episode 6. Currently, for those who are wondering, episode 4 will still be uploaded. We're just having some issues with time zones, trying to find a time for that. Episode 4 is more open-ended questions on what the person wanted to decide. So we're kind of doing a throwback into the original style of the podcast. The next 3 episodes are posted on the actual thread for those that follow it. Feel free to volunteer if you are interested in that. Same volunteers are fine, but we're always looking for new voices, new people. So feel free to volunteer on those and keep up to date. Otherwise, things will continue to be uploaded. And we're currently working also on a YouTube project that will be uploaded as well, or we might even include subtitles with the actual podcasts. Just for those that might be interested. But that'll be some time. We'll still work on that. All right, guys, thank you all for coming to the 6th episode of the Fuwanovel podcast, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.